And guess what the question is?
The question is, why are you Protestant?
Why am I Protestant? Okay, well, like many others, I'm Protestant mostly because I was born Protestant.
Okay.
I was raised in an Anabaptist family. My parents were Amish. I was raised Mennonite, and I live in a very large Mennonite community. And honestly, Catholicism was never even on my radar. Like
I can relate.
Yeah, like in high school, I think maybe we had one Catholic family, and so, and then the little touches that I had with Catholicism, just I wasn't interested, like I went to a Catholic wedding and it was like ridiculous, like everybody was drunk and it was crazy and it was just like, I couldn't.
Well, I can assure you, Anonymous, having been married 2 years ago in the Catholic Church, the wedding with my wife was nothing like that. So that must have been an anomaly.
Now, and mind you, it wasn't the wedding. I'm sure you're talking about the reception.
Exactly.
It would be really bad if it's at the wedding.
Right. Exactly. It was the reception, but it was just there was nothing along the way that would have made me interested at all.
Sure.
Until about 3 months ago. I have a long drive to work, and I was so tired of NPR, and I couldn't. I didn't want sports talk.
Okay.
I find Christian radio pretty boring, and all of that. So I was just channel surfing, and I found Catholic radio, and first of all, I was just blown away. So I've been listening a lot the last 3 months, but things that have. And there's a lot of things I don't have an issue with, like the idea of a universal church and a universal authority. Like, I actually believe in that, but it's just hard. But then, so who should have that authority?
Yes.
That's not really my question, though. Okay.
So what? Yeah. So what is really getting at you, Anonymous?
So here, let me tell you so why am I not Catholic yet? Okay, and help me with this hurdle, and it might just be personal, but it has to do with the physical part of Catholicism, okay? Like, I would hear stories sometimes about, like, there was miracles by like a Virgin Mary statue or something, and she was crying, and I just thought, like, that just seems crazy, like hocus pocus stuff or whatever. So that was in the past. But even now today, like a couple times I've been in Catholic churches, and I find the statues, like, really offensive, like personally offensive, and let me explain a little bit why.
Sure.
Like, growing up, in the Amish tradition, you don't even take pictures because those are graven images, So, like, in my home now, even though I'm no longer even Mennonite, I am just in a mainstream Protestant church. Like, I don't have nativities in my home. I don't have pictures of Jesus in my home. I don't wear a cross with a crucifix.
That is very consistent where many Protestants are not Anonymous.
That's right. I really appreciate what you're saying. You know what? I think I got the gist of this, so if I could jump in, Anonymous. I think the key here is to understand, even from the Old Testament, that understanding, that Amish sort of Mennonite understanding is really not biblical. When you go back to the Old Testament, for example, in Exodus 20, where you have the 10 Commandments, right? Thou shalt not make any graven image of any likeness of anything being in heaven or earth or under the sea. If you go just 5 chapters later, just 5 chapters in Exodus 25, verse 18, what do you have? God commands Moses to make the Ark of the Covenant, and over top of the mercy seat, you have 2 enormous, over 5 foot tall, golden angels. They're cherubim, and so God and I love the way that it's written there in the King James Version. It says, "Thou shalt make 2 golden cherubim out of beaten gold." So wait a minute. God said no statues, and then he commands Moses to make a statue. And think of this as well. The Ark of the Covenant, where you have these enormous golden statues, became a source of God's grace and God's power for God's people. And then you go to Numbers chapter 21, verses 8 and 9, and you see when Moses and the children of Israel were in the wilderness, and they began to rebel against God. God sends a plague of snakes among them. Moses intercedes for them. God commands Moses once again. He says, make a brazen serpent, put it up on a pole, and when the children of Israel looked to it, they were healed. Now, you and I know that in John chapter 3, verses 11 and 12, in the New Testament, we find that is a type or an image representing the coming Christ. But nevertheless, The point is God uses stuff. He uses the physical world to be instruments whereby he brings his blessing to his people. And so even in the Old Testament, you have that. Now, even though you don't have any images of God in the Old Testament, because God in Deuteronomy 4:16 has a stricture against having images of God. But even there, it's an interesting point here, Anonymous. He says, God tells them why. He says, I did not command you concerning the making of images when I brought you out of Israel, because I took no form among you. So God tells them why. I don't want you making forms because I didn't take a form. Well, guess what? In the New Testament, he does. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. And we believe, Anonymous, that in the incarnation now, God has become flesh. And so while we only have that limited use of images in the Old Testament, we have a much a fuller sense of images in the New Testament because, well, principally in Colossians chapter 1, verse 14 and 15, especially verse 15, it says, Christ is the image of God, the firstborn of all creation. And the Greek word there for image is ikon or icon. Christ is the ultimate icon because of the incarnation. We believe in the incarnation, God became physical. And so he relates to us physically. Not that he didn't in the old. Yes, he did through the ark. But the ark and the brazen serpent and such, but now it's a much more intimate
so Tim,
and
let's
physical
pull this together, and then Anonymous will hear from you. So you're saying, Tim, that when God said, do not make graven images, he wasn't saying not make images of any kind because he later commanded people to make images.
Yes.
Rather, he was forbidding the creation of images people would worship in idolatry.
Absolutely right, Trent. And Anonymous, he's condemning idolatry, not the making of statues, because if he was condemning the making of statues, he contradicts himself.
Right, because he wouldn't command you later to do something he said not to do before. So, Anonymous, that was a lot to take in. Is that helpful for what you're searching through?
It is helpful.